All right, guys, how's it going? So we're going to start our nervous system, our final body system today. Excuse me. All right, so let's jump right into it. So let's first talk about neurons. So neurons or nerve cells carry out the functions of the nervous system by conducting nerve impulses. If a neuron is destroyed, it cannot be replaced. Conducting in quotation cell that transmits impulses and the structural unit of the nervous system. So basically, conducting is in quotations because it conducts electricity. There's electrical synapses that happen through a neuron. First, let's talk about dendrites. So dendrites are the fibrous extensions of the cell body, usually short and branching. They increase their surface area to receive signals from other neurons. So dendrites are these little spindly things at the end of this end of the neuron. Then we have the nucleus. There's only one nucleolus in a neuron that functions to help with what the neuron's job is. Then we get the soma or the cell body. Cell body's right here. The cell body is like other types of cells. It has a nucleus and contains many typical cytoplasmic organelles. It lacks centrioles, so it cannot go through cell division. So this is why neurons cannot be replaced, because you cannot go through cell division in a soma. Then let's talk about the myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath, which are these little pieces here, are surrounded by segmented white fatty substance called myelin, or the myelin sheath. They help to protect your body from the signals that go through. Then we get to the axon, which this entire portion right here is your axon. Only one axon projects from each cell body, which is usually elongated, and it carries impulses away from the cell body. Then you have your axon terminals, which are right here. It's on the distal, which is the far end of the telodendria, and they're slightly enlarged to form a synaptic bulb. And then finally, we have Schwann cells, which are what the myelin produces here. These form a tight covering on the axon for protection of the axon. Okay, now we get to talk about neuroglia. So this means nerve glue. Kind of looks like that, actually. It's a special type of connective tissue for the nervous system. Neuroglia cells do not conduct nerve impulses. Instead, they support, nourish, and protect neurons. So that's their sole purpose, is support, nourish, and protection. They are capable of mitosis, unlike neurons, so they can do cell division. They have 4 main functions. They surround the neurons and hold them in place, like this picture here. They supply the nutrients and oxygen to neurons that they need. They insulate one neuron from another and destroy pathogens and remove dead neurons. So let's talk about the nervous system organization. So there are 2 parts to the nervous system itself. So the first part is a central nervous system. It is colored here in red in this picture. We also call it the CNS for short. It's a lot easier to type CNS than central nervous system. The brain and spinal cord are the organs of the CNS. They're the main function of the nervous system, or main pieces of the nervous system. Because they're so vitally important, the brain and spinal cord are encased in bone for protection. So you've got your spine bones, so your spine bones, your backbone, and your brain is encased in your skull. Then you get to your peripheral nervous system, which is literally every other part of the nervous system. We call this the PNS for short. The organs of the PNS are the nerves and the ganglia. Nerves are the bundles of nerve fibers, so all of these are nerve fibers, and we call those nerves. So when somebody says you're getting on my nerves, you're clearly getting on their nerves because they're everywhere. The PNS is further subdivided into sensory division and a motor division. So we're going to break that down here in a second. Sensory means like feel, like your senses. So feel, touch, smell, hear. I believe the only sense that it doesn't, no, it is. It's every sense. So hear, touch, smell, see, and feel. And then motor means like movement. So anytime you want to move an arm, your neurons use the motor division of the PNS. All right, so let's break it down further for you guys. So this is the peripheral nervous system. We're going to talk about the sensory portion and then the motor portion. So the sensory division is also called the afferent division. It transmits impulses from the PNS to the CNS. So the PNS is your, outer nerves, obviously, and the CNS is where your brain and your spinal cord are, just like I mentioned previously. So it has to carry those to the brain. Then you have your motor division, which is also called the efferent division. This one has a little bit more of a job to do. So the somatic nervous system supplies motor impulses to the skeletal muscles. Since you can control these muscles, it's called the voluntary nervous system. So it depends on where those nerves are as to if they're part of this somatic nervous system or not, or the voluntary nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls motor impulses to cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glandular epithelium. And since you cannot control these muscles, it is called the involuntary nervous system. It is concerned with your heart rate, your breathing rate, blood pressure, body temperature, and other activities that work together to maintain homeostasis. So if you go back to when we were talking about muscles, these are the things that we don't control. That's why they're involuntary. So these are happening whether you know it or not. All right. My favorite part about the nervous system is the brain. The brain is very fascinating. It is a incredible organ, and we don't actually know a whole lot about it. They're getting more and more information as the years go on for scientists, but man, there's even a whole branch of science, psychology, that talks about the brain and how it functions. It's very fascinating. So let's talk about the brain as a whole. We call this the cerebrum. The cerebrum is the largest and most obvious portion of the brain because you see it when you look at a brain. It's divided by a deep longitudinal fissure into the two cerebral hemispheres. So this is a side view or a lateral view of the brain. So this is the left side of the brain. The right side of the brain looks exactly the same. Just picture a longitudinal fissure along this section of the brain, side by side. These are two separate entities that are connected by an arching band of white fibers called the corpus callosum. And again, I don't have a picture of that, so I apologize. But your left brain and your right brain each function to do different things. Your left brain actually controls the right side of your body, and the right brain controls the left side of your body. I didn't really discuss it because I didn't find it it's just cool to talk about. It's not important, but the fact that your left brain is in charge of certain things and your right brain is in charge of certain things is insane. This arching band of those white fibers provides a communication pathway between the two halves because they still do have to talk to each other. Each hemisphere is divided into 5 lobes, and you're going to see circles with arrows pop up or circles pop up that shows you the different lobes. So first is the frontal lobe. That's right here. It's in the front. This is the one that takes the longest to develop. You will not have a fully functioning frontal lobe until you are at least 25 years old. And once you get to that point, then your decision-making, because your decision-making abilities are created in the frontal lobe. That's why as a middle schooler, you're a little bit more impulsive versus an adult over the age of 25. We have thought processes and we have the decision-making skills that are needed to get through life without being impulsive. So this is also where your personality comes from. So I'll have to show you guys a really cool case study if you would like, of a guy that had a spike, a railroad spike go through his frontal lobe, and what his personality change was. He lived, which is crazy, but his personality changed because he impaled his frontal lobe. Next, let's talk about the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is right here. It's another pretty large lobe of the brain. I don't have any fun facts about the parietal lobe. The frontal lobe is the most fascinating, as it's not fully functioning till 25. So, and then you have your occipital lobe. Your occipital lobe is right there. This is actually where your vision comes from. So this is where your brain processes pictures for your vision. So kind of cool. And then you have your temporal lobe, which is on the side of where your temples would be. So those of you, again, that wear glasses or even sunglasses, it's right underneath your temple, your temporal piece of your skull, temporal bone. So right underneath that is your temporal lobe. And then last but not least is the insula, and we can't really see this, but it is inside this section right here. It's also called the island of Rheal. It lies deep within that lateral sulcus right there, so you really can't see it, but it is there. All right, so continuing on with the brain, let's talk about this, the brainstem and the cerebellum. So the cerebellum is right here, and the brainstem, it continues down here. The brainstem is the region between the diencephalons and the spinal cord, and we'll talk about the diencephalons next. It consists of 3 parts, which I have circled 2 of them. No, I have circled all 3. No, I circled 2 because you can't see the other one. Midbrain is inside the brain here, and it's literally the middle of the brain. And then you have your pons, which is right here. And then you have your medulla oblongata, which is right here. If you're a big fan of Waterboy, they kind of make fun of the main character for not really using his medulla oblongata. It's where a lot of functions, like every nerve goes through that, and every impulse goes through that. So it controls anger a lot of times too. All right, this region is primarily consisting of nerve fibers that form conduction tracks between the higher brain centers and the spinal cord. So it helps your brain process it before it even gets there. All of the ascending is sensory, and all the descending are motor. Nerve fibers connecting the brain and spinal cord pass through the medulla oblongata. So ascending means going up, and descending means going down. So the cerebellum right here, this whole section right here, is the second largest portion of the brain. It's located between or below the occipital lobe, so right here. And it's got 3 paired bundles of myelinated nerve fibers that form communication pathways between the cerebellum and other parts of the CNS. All right. So the brain inside. So there's some cool things that happen on the inside. Look at that crosscut of that cerebellum. How cool. It looks like a plant. It's kind of cool. So this is called the diencephalon. So that's this entire section right here. It's centrally located and is nearly surrounded by the cerebral hemispheres. Their functions are pretty important. That's why they're protected by your brain or your other parts of your brain. It includes things like the thalamus, which is right here. It is 80% of the diencephalon, which consists of 2 oval masses of gray matter that serve as a relay station for sensory impulses, except for the sense of smell. Your sense of smell is controlled by a different portion of your brain. And I can't remember what that portion is. Hypothalamus is right here. It is a small region below the thalamus, and it plays a key role in maintaining homeostasis, so proper body temperature, proper anything, heartbeat, anything like that. And then last but not least is the epithalamus. The epithalamus is pretty cool because it's the most dorsal portion of the diencephalon, so it's the very small part there, but in the very back. That's what dorsal means. It's this small gland that's involved in the onset of puberty and rhythmic cycles like your biological clock. So Biological clock, I don't know. It's not a real, well, it's a real thing. It's a body rhythm. Some people's are different than others. The same thing with sleeping patterns. There are people that are morning people, and there are people that are night people, and there are people that just, exist. That's one of the rhythmic cycles it it helps to work with. Okay, last but not least, guys, is the brainstem. So this is where, the spinal cord. This is where all of your nerve impulses start from. I mean, not start from, but, this is where they all come out of. It has two main functions. Serves as a pathway for impulses going to and from the brain, because your brain does talk to your body does talk to your brain constantly. Sensory impulses travel up the cord, and then your motor impulses travel down the cord. So ascending and descending one more time. It serves as a reflex center, which is kind of cool. The reflex arc is the functional unit of the nervous system. Reflexes are just responses to stimuli that do not require conscious thought. So if you've ever been to the doctor, which doctors don't do this when you're older, but they do, just not as frequently as when you're a kid. So if you've ever been at the doctor's office and you're sitting there and he gets out the little tool and taps on your knee, and your knee goes flunk, or not your knee, like your leg goes up and down, that's a reflex. So they're checking to see what your reflexes do, what your reflex response time is, because if your reflexes are a little slow, they may be concerned with your nervous system. You could have any number of things that could affect it. They occur more quickly than reactions that require thought process, which is kind of cool. That's why many reflexes are actually mediated in the spinal cord. It doesn't have to go up to the brain itself, to the higher brain centers, because they can handle it on their own. Now, as far as things that can affect the brain or the nervous system, there are a lot of diseases and syndromes that affect these things. Even getting hurt in your spine at all can cause severe nerve damage, can cause you to be paraplegic, or just a quadriplegic. Paraplegic means you can't move your legs anymore, and quadriplegic means you cannot move any body part below your neck. You've got things like MS, which is multiple sclerosis, can affect the brain and the spinal cord and the nervous system. The muscles and all that kind of stuff. And then, if you're talking about the brain specifically, you could do anything to it and it might survive and it might not. Concussions are a thing. Like I said earlier about the frontal lobe being impaled, that's a thing. You can still live with a hole in your head, unfortunately. May not be fun. You can also get dementia or Alzheimer's disease, which there's not a whole lot of, they're trying to figure it out. Dementia's been around for as long as humans have been around, but they're trying to figure out, Alzheimer's, like how to reverse it. I wish we could go into this and have a really good discussion about it, because it's really fascinating, the brain. But if you have any other questions, I'm pretty knowledgeable. I love talking about the brain. So let me know if you do have any questions.